There we go.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am super, super excited for Scale to Wealth today. And I'm really excited for more than my normal level of excitement. Normally, I'm 3 cups of coffee deep, and I'm pretty jazzed up with sweaty palms to share you guys some really exciting things. But today, we have my good friend, Amanda Dahl, on the call. Amanda's energy is fantastic. And so because her energy is so great, and because I will miss one of her 9 million fantastic things about her, I'm going to let her introduce herself. So Amanda, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and which will be self-explanatory of why we asked you to jump on the call with us today.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. So my name is Amanda Dahl. I am based in Tampa Bay, Florida. I've been in the real estate industry almost 8 years. March of next year will be 8 years. And I am a licensed realtor. I started back in 2015, and I did a lot of probably what you all do. I was hired as an executive assistant to a guy that wanted to build a real estate team. Fast forward 6.5 years, I left the team and I launched a coaching and consulting company so that I could teach individuals how to build really successful real estate teams. So that's what I do now. My company is Amanda Dahl Consulting, and next month will be a year that we launched. So that's me in a nutshell. I love pink.
That's incredible. Amanda is skimming over something really important, which I want to go ahead and talk about. Amanda, when you came on with your former Rainmaker as an executive assistant, did you have any experience in operations or executive assistants roles before?
In real estate, no. The majority of my background was hotel and hospitality management. So I did have a lot of experience in operations, and I answered an ad and never did real estate a day in my life. As a matter of fact, I was married at the time, and I was going through a real estate transaction personally. We were buying our first home together. So I knew nothing about real estate other than the consumer experience that I was getting at that time.
Oh, how funny. Okay. So you answer a call or answer an ad, and you go in and say, I want to get into, or I want to potentially be an executive assistant for you. What did his business look like initially when you first joined?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, I'll take a step back for a moment because I think this is a huge point to highlight. What you say and the vision that you cast matters. And so I like to emphasize this. I answered a Craigslist ad. The majority of people that I talk to about my story, they want this big, sexy story, right? Oh my gosh, you went through all of this amazing talent to find this one, and she was so wonderful. And the reality is I just answered a Craigslist ad. The ad was so appealing, though. It used words that spoke to who I was at the time, who I wanted to become, what job I wanted. They used words like elite operations talent and no cap, no ceiling, learning base, like all of these words that spoke to who I am and what my core values are. So when you're looking for that piece of talent, just FYI, make sure that what you say, you really are honing in on the talent that you want to find in those words. So make sure that you're very specific about those things. So back to your original question. Yes. So
I love that, because this call, right? It's an operations-based call, but the coolest part about it is we're talking about that zig and zag, right? So you have CEOs here who are listening to it live and are going to watch the recording, and the operations team member. And it's about that marriage. So I'm glad that you're speaking to both sides of it, which we'll get into in just a minute of why it's important that you're doing that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So the brokerage that I'm with is Keller Williams Realty. And so I joined a guy who got in, and he had a couple of people tell him that he was kind of wasted potential. Like, you've got this amazing potential and you're not doing anything with it. And so after hearing that for about the third time, he got really serious about finding somebody who could literally take the operations side of the business and help him scale. So if any of you are book readers, I would highly recommend Rocket Fuel. That book talks about the visionary and the integrator. And so that's what he was looking for, the integrator, the person that could take the things that he wasn't good at and run with them. So when I met him, it was March of 2015 that we joined forces. And so the year before, he had done about 35 transactions right around the $8.5 million mark. I came in, and it was very clear what my job was, right? I was doing everything except for the 5 things that are dollar productive to an agent, which are lead generation, lead follow-up, going on appointments, negotiating offers, and script practice and role play. So I just want you to hear that, because he didn't have this. Yeah, he didn't have this beautiful job list of things. He's like, everything belongs to you except these 5 things. And that was okay, because I figured it out. So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's incredible. So list those 5 things for us again. So if you're a CEO, this is what you should be doing. Or if you're a real estate agent hiring someone for the ops side and you're separating it out, what are the 5 things?
And again, this is for a rainmaker. So someone who's still very much in production: lead generation, lead follow-up, going on appointments, negotiating offers, and script practice and role play. All of those things are tied to they're dollar productive. Those are your big rocks as a rainmaker.
So now you hire an ops person to come on board, and they're going to take everything else.
Everything else. So now remember, this is somebody who's looking for, I like to refer to it as an empire builder, although the size of your empire really isn't relevant. If you want to build something, not someone that's just going to take on mundane tasks or not really looking to grow or scale a business, someone who's really looking to actually do those things, you're looking for that empire builder. So this is someone that's going to, like, I owned the finances in our organization. He made one hire, and that was me. I hired everybody else in our organization. I went out and learned how to do that. So this is someone who's literally going to take everything off of your plate except for those 5 things. Awesome. So that was in 2014. He had finished about 8.5 million, 35 transactions. So I joined him in March of 2015, and we did that whole year, he and I and his brother. So his brother was working with buyers. He was just focused on listings. And we finished that year at 85 transactions and 21.5 million. So we essentially almost tripled the business.
Yeah.
And we attributed to, again, I took all of those things off of his plate. So I bought him back his time. And I feel like this is the key. He actually put that time back into the business, into those 5 things. So I think there's a lot of people who bring someone in and go, great, I got my time back. And then they don't reinvest it back into the business. They take extra vacations, which there's nothing wrong with, right? We can take extra time, right, to recharge. But I think that they lose sight of the fact that you're supposed to take this and reinvest it. And that's how we were able to triple the business, essentially.
That's incredible. So in 1 year, we tripped, like how I say we, because I'm like, I want to be on this winning bandwagon. So in 1 year, almost triple the business. Now fast forward to 2 years ago. What did the business look like then?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, growing a real estate team and scaling a real estate team was probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. And I learned so much. It's grown me in my leadership. And I went from executive assistant to director of operations to director of sales to VP of operations, and then on to the CEO. And I was in the CEO role for about 120 days before we had just decided that we had served our time together. And fantastic relationship. We're still great friends. I'm sure we will be in business at some capacity in the future. It's just, I was ready to go on and do bigger and better things. And, you know, he was ready to do different things as well. And so I left the team, and you said that was last year, right? You want me to fast forward to last year? Yeah. So I left the team in August of last year. And as a byproduct of actually running the real estate team, you know, people were starting to catch on to what we were doing. They see us double, or they see us almost triple, and then they saw us double. And then the next year we doubled. And they're like, could you teach me how to do that? Could you show us what you're doing? Would you teach a class in our market center, or would you come Zoom into one of our team meetings? And so organically, I fell into coaching and consulting, and I was just showing people what we were doing and how we were doing it. So it was about year 2.5, I got into coaching and consulting on the side. And that was great because it opened up another income stream for me as an operations professional, which I think is another really key point in this conversation. I think a lot of the times on the operations side, we don't realize what our role can be. We don't realize how big we can grow. And I think there's this misconception that the money is to be made on the sales side. And I'll tell you, I mean, and I'm very transparent. The last year that I was with them, which was last year, I cleared over $200,000 as an employee to someone on a real estate team. Now ask me how that happened, because I had 3 different sources of income. And it's because of the things that I was doing on the real estate team that opened up opportunities for me. And he and I had a very, very, very good understanding. And that was, as long as my job got done, I could do other things. And doing coaching on the side allowed me to make $30,000 to $40,000 extra a year. And guess what? He didn't have to do as the rainmaker. He didn't have to be looking at me every single year going, gosh, I got to give her a raise. Gosh, we got to figure out how to make more money, because I was creating opportunities for myself through what I was doing with the real estate team. And as long as my job got done on the real estate team, I was allowed to go do other things. And I say allowed because it was earned autonomy. So I think that's super, super important that you all hear that on the operation side, there's really a lot that you can do. There's a lot of opportunities that will open up when you start doing the right things in your organization that can earn you other income. And that way you don't have to jump to the sales side, which I think a lot of people think they need to do.
What I think so interesting that you just said, and it's a huge takeaway for me too, and you skimmed over it a little bit, so I'm going to dive a little deeper. When you win to such an incredible degree in your role, when you own it and win and grow it in such a way that people take notice, opportunities can come along. And you can build your world on the operations side to be as big as you want it to be. But first, you've got to be kick-ass and dominate in your role. And once you do that, not only can you grow it underneath you in your real estate business, we all work for these unbelievable entrepreneurs who are going to help to celebrate our entrepreneurial successes as well within their world and alongside their world. And so, like, I'll give you an example. Brett's always coming up with a new business, right? He's always coming up with a growth opportunity. And so if I crush it in this role, I'm gifted the opportunity to continue to grow in his world or alongside his world. But that's only earned. So I wanted to go back to that earned autonomy or that earned opportunity by crushing it where you are first, which
Absolutely.
is, you take that for granted because you crush everything, Amanda.
Well, I appreciate you. And we can have a whole nother call on my failures. The other thing that I will say is I was so fortunate to be partnered with someone that understood that I was going to fail. I mean, I tell this story constantly. In my first 30 days, I cost him $1,600. I recorded a listing commission wrong. We couldn't go back on it. $1,600. Now he's lesser, right, in this transaction. And my question to him, first I called him and I said, hey, I realized what I did. And, he's just coming off the high of a listing appointment that he just took and he's so excited. So I was like, I did something. I realized what I did. I also put something in place so it doesn't happen again. Are you ready? I cost us $1,600. So my question to you is, do I still have a job? And he paused for a moment and he said, do you still have a job? Not only do you have a job, I just invested $1,600 more in you. Now you're going to help me find a listing. And that speaks volumes about our relationship because I know so many people that would have let that individual go. And what he did identify was, I'm going to fail. I'm going to make mistakes. And I say this as humbly as possible. If he would have let me go, man, what a huge mistake that man would have made. And yet he realized I was going to fail forward. And he realized that as long as I was learning from it and I was implementing something to make sure that it didn't happen again, we were good. And so he allowed me a platform to do that on. And then in addition to that, he also, again, he was only tied to the results. It got to a point where what would take me 20 hours then was only taking me 15 hours, then was only taking me 10 hours because I'm getting more efficient and I'm getting better at my job. And so he didn't care how much time it took me. He just cared that it was done and that it met our standards. Our clients were happy. All of our, it was ethical, it was moral, all of those things. He didn't care how much time it took me. So because I started to buy back some of my time, I could then go on and do different things. So earned autonomy, I think, is huge in what you said.
Yeah. Man, I got to tell you, I'm sitting here listening to you, Amanda, and number one, your energy, it's a BYOE, bring your own energy, and you brought the daylights out of your energy, which you always do in every conversation. But the other thing that you bring that's so cool is your mindset. So you go into this world that you know nothing about the industry. They're doing 36 transactions a year. At your high water mark, how many transactions did y'all do?
312.
Okay. I don't know how I missed that in our previous conversations.
So wait, I just want to make sure I understood the question. So when I left, so our best year, we ended up in Gary's top 100 a couple years in a row, and we did 312 transactions at 120 million.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the mindset when you come in. So you come in and you say, he says, I'm going to focus on these 5 things. You're going to take care of everything else. So you start with just, I'll say it, a hot mess, right? Of just chaos happening. And you grow it into an incredible, high producing top business with multiple layers of operational support team. what is your mindset going into that? And how do you not just fall into that like personal executive assistant role?
Wow, that's a great question. So I'm really good with storytelling to get my point across. So I'll tell you a story. It was probably end of year one. So no, actually we were probably like right in the first quarter of year two. And he kept coming back from these conferences or these masterminds or these phone calls. And he's like, you know, Amanda, I just think you could be doing more. I just don't know that you're time blocking as efficiently as you possibly can. And quite frankly, it was pissing me off. I'm like, how, like, really? How do you know? You don't sit in my chair every day. And I was getting mad, and I am fueled by pain and anger. Like, I want to be, I'm very competitive, and I want to be right. And I will get all the facts and the data that I need. And it frustrated me that every time I showed up to that conversation, I truly didn't know if he was right or if I was right, because I didn't know why the information was so conflicting. Because I'm like, I literally am working around the clock. I'm doing everything I possibly can. I'm a pretty organized person. I'm a pretty quick learner. I'm a pretty smart person. And yet he keeps telling me I could be doing more. Now, what I identified—
I won't ask for a raise of hands. However, I will tell you on behalf of everyone else on this call, we have heard a million times, like, maybe if you time block better, or that shouldn't take that long. Brett's concept of time is lunacy.
Yeah.
Lunacy. So we've all been sitting in that seat. So what do we do?
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep getting mad, because until I can absolutely justify, he's going to be right every single time, because I don't know any better. Now, fast forward, what I identified was I'm in Florida, so we're a title state, and he was comparing us to an attorney state. So Sarah, who works for big mega agent in New York, is home by 5 every day, and they're going to do 90 transactions this year. Well, we weren't comparing apples to apples, number one. The way that I identified that, though, was through an exercise that I asked every single one of my clients to do it, and almost 95% of them fight me tooth and nail every single time I ask them. And yet, it's a time audit. And this is probably one of the most tedious things that you're going to do. Yet I can promise you, nobody's going to be able to help you until you get a very clear picture as to where you're at. Then I need to know where to meet you, which is why I make my clients do this. And so I'm like, just like you would do a journal, I want you to do a time log. And for the next 14 days, from the time that you wake up to the time that you go to bed, I want you to document everything that you're doing. I don't care if it's in your notepad on your phone. I don't care if it's a little journal you carry around with you, yet you can't use the excuse, crap, I don't have that piece of paper, so I can't document. You need to have something with you at all times. And if you're getting in the car to drive to an appointment, then you put, it's 12:18 driving to an appointment. And when you get back to the office, it's 1:18, got back from the appointment. I want a time log of everything that you're doing. Because what I know is the majority of people, they judge themselves on their intentions and not their actions. Yet you are very quick to judge other people on their actions and not their intentions. And so your head hits the pillow at night and you go, oh, well, I intended to do X, Y, and Z, and I didn't. So here's a very clear picture of what you did. And every person that I have do this exercise, they go, gosh, I waste a lot of time checking email. Gosh, I waste a lot of time on social media. Gosh, I waste a lot of time in the car. I might need a runner. And so what we identify is, where are you spending your time? Is it worth your dollar per hour rate? And if it's not, then these things become the job description for the next person that you bring into your organization. So that's what I did. For 2 weeks, I wrote down everything that I did. And every time I logged into whatever it was, I put a timestamp next to it and what the activity was. And what I first identified was the time blocking I was doing was nowhere near what I needed to. I was allowing an hour for emails. I needed 2 hours a day at 2 different times. And I was allowing 30 minutes for phone call returns. I actually needed an hour a day at 2 different times. So it brought clarity to where I was spending the most of my time. It also, though, became the job description for the next person. And so what I identified after this exercise was, dang, I'm spending about 20 hours a week in listings management stuff. So I'm going to go find a listings manager so I can leverage my time back.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that Brett asks when we go to meetings like that, and Sabrina and I were laughing about it back at our mastermind in November or in July, Brett will say, give us something to do. And we'll say, we obviously don't have time. Like, we're at maximum, so help us reprioritize on this list. And his phrase will be, how can I buy your time back? What check do I have to write? And if you don't have an answer, if it's, I don't know, I need an assistant. Well, that's not going to get you any help. But if you say, I spend 20 hours a week on listing management, I need a listing manager, that's a way different conversation. So you said something earlier where you come prepared to justify, you come prepared to ask those questions. I love that exercise.
Well, that day he said it again and I was like, I'm booking a conference room. So I did. And I was like, here you go. I've got 20 hours a week in listings management. So you keep telling me I can do more. I need another person. And you know what he did? He looked right back at me and he said, why don't you hire two? And it was not a question because I did the work. I identified where the issue was. I came solution based. And what was he going to say? He's like, hire two. And that was it. That started the journey.
I love it. So, if someone it was on this call and they were struggling with that straddle from, the first hire, you're going to get everything, right? Everything except those 5. And so sometimes it can be pick up the dry cleaning, grab XYZ at the store for me, get the car washed, and then also run our business financials. It's a whole bag of mess. And perhaps they struggle with the mindset of doing the smaller tasks to earn the right to get the leverage piece. What mindset advice do you have for them?
So I think there's a couple of different things, right? One of my favorite questions is, how do you win with me? And on the flip side of that, how do you lose with me? And my answer is always this: somebody who owns it at all levels. And I think first and foremost, you have to own whatever you're responsible for, even if it's things that at this point you loathe. And I promise you, there were details in my job description that I loathed. And I didn't earn the right to give those away until I had built a system and a process for them so that I could leverage it appropriately for a couple of reasons. Now, hindsight being 2020, I get it. Yet when I was in the middle of it, I was like, this sucks. God, can't I just go do something else? Amanda, why are you still sitting here? This is ridiculous. If you don't like what you're doing. And I was determined to get past it. So everything that I did, if you have to do it more than once in your business, it should have a documented process and some type of system to follow. So let's just get really clear on that. Once I started to do those things, then it was much easier to even talk about leverage, right? Because how many times, and I know a lot of you experience this too, how many times do you maybe bring on new leverage and you're like, great, day one, you're just going to sit next to me and watch everything that I do. Like, that is the worst first day for anybody in existence. Instead, wouldn't it be so great if you go, hey, here's day one for you. We're going to give you some type of orientation. We're going to onboard you appropriately. And here's an awesome files library that you can go to, or here's some documentation that you could watch on your job. And then you and I are going to talk about it at the end of the day. Like, that's a much better experience bringing in leverage. So first, the mindset is to own the job. You need to understand it first as the person who owns it. And you need to put some type of system and process in place so that when it comes time to have that leverage conversation, it's easy for you to leverage it. My thought process and leverage is anytime I bring someone in, the last thing I want to do is get the job back. I'm doing everything in my power to not get the job handed back to me. And if I don't set it up appropriately with systems and processes and communication so that they know that there's an answer and Amanda's not it. Here's where you go find the answer. If I don't show them that, then I'm going to get the job back every single time. And what's the point of having them, right? So I think that was my mindset, is just own it and put a system and process in place that's easy to leverage once I bring that new piece of leverage in.
I love that. One of the things that I'm noticing, Amanda, in the way that you're talking about things is your organizational tools. You are so organized and I can tell by A, knowing you, but B, in the way that you're speaking. When you say, hey, if there's anything you've done in your business more than once, it should have the documentation, the systems, your SOPs should be outlined so you have an easy way. And then there's 2 places to go. I'm adding the second for you, just for my own personal flavor. You can go to XYZ place to get that information that, by the way, is not Amanda, or frickin' Google. Figure it out. But here's the 2 places. I'm here to support you and I love you and I'll do all of those things. But here's 2 places you can consistently go that aren't interrupting everyone else's business workflow so that you have all of the tools at your fingertips. How are you organizing all of this? What are some of your organizational tools and strategies?
So I love project management systems. And just to comment very briefly on something that you said, as a leader, like, leading individuals is one of the hardest jobs. It's one of the most rewarding and it's one of the hardest jobs you will ever have. And if you're going to lead someone, I know so often we can get frustrated and go, I'll just do it myself. Yet it is our job as leaders to teach people how to think and be resourceful.
Right.
And if we can't do that, then what are we doing? We literally just, we can't even delegate properly if we're not teaching people how to think and be resourceful. So in doing that, it's like, I will help you if you've exhausted all of your efforts. Yet if you're coming to me for something that I know is in a binder that I gave you and told you about at least 3 times, the first thing I'm going to say is, you know what, that's such a great question, Caitlin. If you had to guess, where would you go look for that? Why don't you try that and then come back to me? And guess what? The questions become less and less and less, and they become more resourceful. And then when they are finally getting to me, they will literally start the sentence with, Amanda, I swear I checked 8 places and I have no idea where it is. This is why I came to you. And I'm like, good, now we can talk. Yet the amount of interruptions I was getting on a regular basis were a full-time job. Like all I did was handle requests, and I couldn't do that because I had a job to do. So I love project management. Back to your original question. I love project management software. One of my favorites is a Trello. Trello. They do have a free version. I recommend you upgrade to the paid version because it gives you more features and it's like $6. So I like free and I like super cheap. If you want to get an idea of what it is, go to YouTube and type in Trello tutorial. You can watch a 5-minute video on how Trello functions. And what this allows me to do is it allows me to see anything that's happening in my world at the 10,000 foot view. And then I can go micro as I want to. I can click into different boards with different cards and different things and identify what I need to in each one of those. And Jeff and I started this process. That was my old Rainmaker. Jeff and I started this process probably maybe year 3. Because I can tell you, Amanda usually exhausts all like efforts and gets frustrated before there's I told you I'm driven by pain. So if I'm like, oh, it's okay, I won't, it's fine. Eventually I get to a point where it's so painful, I got to do something. And so he would put sticky notes on my desk, which by the way, he writes like a freaking doctor. So I can't read it. And then he would send me texts and he would send me emails. And then it would be Facebook instant message. And then it would be Google Hangouts. And then it was WhatsApp. And I was like, I'm done. So 30 minutes a day, I was just collecting all of the brain dumping he was doing on his off time. And I was like, we can't. So we're going to start a Trello board. Now, here's what I'll say. And remember this, write this down. The person that owns the job or the person that owns the system has to love it. The individuals that use it only have to like it. I don't need you to love it. But if I own the database, I have to love whatever our CRM is and the systems we have in it because I'm living in it all day long. If you're just an agent using it, I need you to like it at most. And so I told him, I said, I've got a system that I found that I loved. I just need you to like it, take a look at it, watch this tutorial, blah, blah, blah. So what I did was I created a board, and that board was called Jeff's Brain Dumping Board. And in that board, I created 3 lists: dumping, doing, and done. So Jeff would go in and he would create a card and he would brain dump. And then as Amanda was doing it, she'd move it. And when it was done, it got done. And what I love about Trello is, and all I asked him to do was, I need you to title whatever the card is. I need you to title the card with whatever the idea was. So research brevity. We were looking to jump CRM. So research brevity. And then I need you to put as many details as you can to help me so that I don't have to come back and ask questions. And so he would put, so research brevity. I wanted to have campaigns, automatic campaigns. I want it to be under $1,500 a month. So he would give me the important details that I would need. And then the third piece, and this is probably the most important piece, was he had to rate it on priority level. So we had 3 priority levels. Priority level 1 means it has to be done in the next 24 hours. And if he ever labeled something priority 1, my immediate follow-up question was, here's what I'm working on. Do I need to stop this or can it wait till I'm finished? Priority number 2 is it needs to get done in the next 3 to 5 days. Priority number 3 is I need it in the next 20 to 30 days. And so every time he brain dumped, it had to have a priority. And if it didn't, I could put a little comment in there and say, hey, Jeff, I don't see a priority level. Or, hey, I see this is priority 1. Here's what I'm working on. Can I get it to you by Tuesday? And he would confirm. I put the onus back on him because everything was pants on fire. Everything needed to be happening yesterday, right? And my world didn't work that way. So when I put the onus back on him, do you want me to stop what it is that I'm doing and start this, or can it wait? He would let me know. And it saved me so much time and stress. Y'all, I was working on stuff that he had asked me to do months prior, and I thought we were still going. And I didn't even realize. And once once we got a handle on all of that, he's like, oh yeah, I forgot I asked you to do that. Don't worry about it. I changed my mind. And I'm like, oh my God, this has been 30 days of work that doesn't even matter anymore.
Right.
And Mo Anderson said this. Mo Anderson said this to Gary Keller. She said, literally, he would ask me to do stuff and I would take it one step further. And literally, I would go back to him the next week and say, here's what I got, because he would change his mind all the time. And I was like, I should have taken a page out of her book.
Yeah, that is so funny. You know, we talk a lot, Amanda, on this call and also throughout, Be Wealthy, about in ops, if we really think of ourselves as the asset to the company, our time is the company's resource. So the company gets to determine how we allocate our time, even if we're X amount of deep in a project and now it's time to abort said project. We can be very emotionally attached to that, a little frustrated at times, but our time is the company's resource. Why wouldn't we say, just like our rainmakers have an investment portfolio, right? So they're looking at what's the ROI, how to constantly top grade it, and how to reallocate those resources for the best possible return.
Yep.
We also are that asset to the company, and our time becomes more and more valuable. The better we get, our rate of return is more valuable. So constantly trying to go to your rainmaker and say, I love it. I'm never going to tell you no. I got it. How should I reprioritize? What would give you the best possible value? And asking for the reprioritization versus, how am I ever going to get that done? Which is what I usually want to say. I usually want to say, like, I love it, but that's never going to happen. My responsibility is to say, absolutely, I will get that done. When does it need to be done by? And what else would you like to reprioritize?
Yes. And listen, when people would ask me what I did, I used to tell people all the time, Jeff and I were partners, and like, he didn't care. He's like, I don't care what you tell people you do or how you tell me to, I don't care. Whatever makes you happy is fine. We know what you do. And he's like, change your title, change your card. I don't care. And we literally operated like partners, yet make no mistake, I was his leverage. And so you would never hear no, and this is why, come out of my mouth. What you would hear though is yes, and this is how, and how maybe not be right now. It may be next week by Tuesday. And that was okay. So I never told him no. It was yes and how may not be right now. So just be cognizant of that, because I know sometimes we're like, how could they even? They're not paying attention. This is unbelievable. Do they know what I do? I would never tell him no. I would tell him yes, and I would let him know how we could get it done. And he was either okay with that. Otherwise, we'd have a conversation about restructuring, just like you said, you and Brett did.
Mm-hmm. Whitney has a super good question. And Whitney, if you want to unmute yourself on this also, you can. She asked, at what point do you know when you should reprioritize? Do you only allow a certain amount of projects or tasks a day, week, etc.?
Oh, so I love this question. And it reminds me of a question that I ask quite often in like the recruiting process. And that's, how long would you be willing to fail before you would succeed at a task? And so that's what I think. When I look at my day, like, I think it's very important that you do audits. And for those of you rainmakers that are on this call, that you're doing audits, it is your job as the leader to inspect what you're expecting of your individuals. And so you should be doing audits on what it is that they are completing, and everything should have a way to measure it. I don't care if it's a list, how long it takes to put a listing in a system. I don't care if it's how long it takes us to reply back to clients. I don't care what it is in the business. There should always be something to measure against. And I can tell you, for me, like, I would have on my calendar that I needed to go in and audit systems and processes that my people were doing. However, I was also auditing my own too. And I think if you are someone who really owns it at a high level, then you look and you say, okay, I know on average when a file goes under contract, from the time that I actually get what I need to the time it's onboarded takes me about 20 minutes. Okay, fantastic. So 20 minutes is your benchmark now. And anytime you onboard a file that takes you more than 20 minutes, you should be asking why. What happened? What caused this to happen? Is it that the agent didn't get me what I needed to initially? Is it that the lender was slow? Is it that the title company didn't respond? Is it that we didn't have the correct information and sent it to the wrong people? And you should be auditing these things regularly. And as you're doing these audits, once you identify, like, it's taking us more time, which it shouldn't, or we're doing, like, I can't tell you how many times I've audited a process and I'm like, let's get it from 10 steps to 7. And then let's get it from 7 steps to 4. So if you're constantly seeing, like, wow, when I look at this thing from start to finish, I realize that we actually double back or triple back several times in the process. How do I get us more efficient? Those are the things I would be looking at. So it would be different for each organization, but I would absolutely be looking at what's the metrics for the thing to start with. How much time should it be taking us? How many hands are involved? How many steps does it have? And then by that, you can go ahead and track your time. You can track the amount of steps, and you can track how many people are involved. Because in my opinion, the more hands in the pot, the more convoluted that it gets. So how do we get this from touching 3 hands to 1? How do we get it from 10 steps to 7? And how do we get it from 20 minutes to 15 minutes? And that's what I would be looking at.
I totally agree with that. The other thing I would mention too is if you're looking at, so now you're prioritizing, or excuse me, you're evaluating each of your systems. The point, Whitney, that I would go like, crap, I need to talk to Brett, or I need to talk to Joe and Taylor, I need to talk to so-and-so, would be if I'm going to miss deadlines. So if all of a sudden they give me a new project, and because of a new project, I'm going to miss my other deadlines, that's the breaking point that I have to say, cool, here's what I'm working on, here's what it looks like. But what I love that Amanda said was, if I can describe it, it's like Amanda's energy. I think sometimes in operations, we can be on our heels, right? We're the receiver. And so we can be on defense, meaning like you're on your heels. Like I think if I played competitive, not competitive, it was like club volleyball when I was a kid. I don't know why I'd call that competitive. In volleyball, right? You're like, you're on your heels. And you're just going to be receiving that. You should never be sitting on your heels. You should always be sitting on your toes, ready? You should be on offense, ready to go. Amanda's energy and the way she's tackling task management, prioritization, growth, asking for help, none of it's coming from a defense. All of it's offensive, not offensive, but on offense.
Yes.
All of it's coming from, this is what I need to be better. This is how I'm going to be better. I'm going to sharpen this tool. She's in the driver's seat versus a lot of times I think on the upside, we tend to be in the passenger seat. It's happening to us. Nothing's happening to Amanda. Amanda's happening to the company. Amanda's coming in, continually sharpening, optimizing, enhancing efficiencies and systems and processes, and then taking what she needs and asking for what she needs versus, oh my gosh, how am I going to get all this done? What does this look like? It's a total different body positioning based on how you execute. Whitney, before my tangent about Amanda's energy and my terrible volleyball career, did we answer your question, or did you have any follow-up to it? I want to make sure you get everything you need.
No, that was really great. Both of you guys combined was just perfection. It was just when I get tasks, I think you kind of hit it on the nail as far as like the deadlines, which is probably the most obvious answer, because they brain dump so much on me and they want so much. And anyway, so yes, you guys did great. Thank you.
Okay.
And
cool.
so if you're sitting here like I was when I was in your seat and you're like, that's really great. You're telling us all this amazing stuff, Amanda. Now, how? I don't think a lot of people go deep and tell you how to accomplish it, right? They tell you the what, they don't tell you the how. So the how is simple. Jeff was never in a million years going to be able to teach me this stuff. As a matter of fact, the whole premise of my job was because he didn't know these things. So he wasn't going to teach me how to be more efficient. All he could tell me is what he expected, and then I had to go figure it out. So whatever it is that you're doing, I would highly recommend that on your growth plans that you guys do each year, that you have masterminds in communities. I plugged into every support professional mastermind I could. I actually joined the National Association of Real Estate Support Professionals, which is a real thing. I joined the board. So I got to network with transaction managers. I got to network and mastermind with other support professionals in different brokerages across the entire industry. And so what I would do is I would literally ask myself, the highest level or the highest form of question that you can ask is who's doing it at the level that I want to, who's doing what we want to be able to do, how do I go find that individual, right? And so I'm telling you, I learned all of my stuff from finding the person that was doing 200 units when we were only doing 100 and copying their model because they were so freely giving it away. Like, here's what we're doing, use it. The reality is most people are willing to share with you. The irony is the majority of people that receive that information don't do anything with it. So I can tell you personally, if I've built it, it's yours. Go take my logo off, put your logo on and see if it works for you, right? I don't mind, but most people won't go back and do that. So go learn from the people that are doing it at the level you want to. Go ask the questions, plug into the masterminds. That was something I did from the very beginning. I was like, I'm very much learning based. So let me tell you, I want to go to conferences. I want to go to masterminds. Here are classes that are specific to support professionals. These are conferences that are just being held for support professionals. I'm willing to put something in place to earn the right to go, yet make no mistake, I want to go. So how do we make it happen? And so we did. Sometimes it was to meet a certain metrics. And then Jeff would be like, absolutely, I'll pay for it. And then once I got to a point where he saw that like I really earned the right to go to these things, he's like, absolutely. But what I can tell you is when you go, I want 3 ahas and one thing you're going to come back and implement immediately. And the second that stops is the second I stop paying for it. So every event that I went to, I had 3 ahas and one thing I would come back and implement immediately, and he could see it in the business. And so he was willing to pay for those things. But I think a lot of people have this conception or this misconception that, oh, well, I should just earn it because I have the role. Well, no, you need to have some skin in the game. You need to show them why, right? Because we have to have a for-profit business. And if we're constantly throwing money out the window and we're not seeing the results, then it's going to become a problem. So plug into those masterminds, network with those individuals, look up NARES, the National Association of Real Estate Support Professionals, like plug into whatever you can to learn from those individuals.
So unbelievable.
And be wealthy and plug in to be wealthy. Obviously, that goes without saying. This community is amazing.
Well, thank you for that, Amanda. To that point, though, that's what these calls on Mondays are for. So often we'll teach different pillars of, our operations curriculum, but that's why we brought on Amanda this week. And last week, we were really working on project management software. If there are specific topics that you guys are interested in, we're a community. Let me know. We will get the best of the best in here to go ahead and educate just us and spend time with just us getting all of your questions answered. So this is a resource for you, not just from the knowledge we have or the strategies that we help you to implement your business. We can go get anyone we want to come help train and educate in our community. So ask for what you're looking for as an additional resource that, oh, by the way, won't cost you, the ops person or your CEO, any more financially upfront. It's part of our community. So we'll go get those resources for you too, if that will help you to get started in moving a whole lot faster. I have a quick pivot for you, Amanda. So we've talked a lot as the ops person, right? And your strategy, mindset, tools that you utilize. However, a lot of the people on this call are also the CEOs, which I think is so cool. There's nothing more impactful than when the CEO is sitting with the COO or the ops person, and they're taking these strategies, getting off the call and saying, okay, cool. What are we going to implement? What would work well in our business, or how could we fine tune what we have? So now talking to the CEOs, trying to help develop an operations team member to take the journey you took. Maybe they're an executive assistant today. Maybe they just started, we're just starting to grow the business and we're starting to see that growth. How can they help to coach, train, and develop their operations team member to have success that could be modeling after yours?
Such a great question. We could do a whole call on this, actually. What I will say first and foremost is you have to be willing to invest in your people. And I think so often we go, well, I'm hiring for someone, so I'm going to take them through the recruiting process and they've got to prove that they need to be in this job. Well, you got to prove that you earn the right to be their leader. And I think the biggest missed opportunity is when an individual decides, now I'm going to go build something and I'm going to bring people in my world. They don't ask the question, who do I need to become to lead them? And it could look very different than what you're doing now. So you have to be extremely cognizant of that. Ask yourself that question, do some deep diving and some journaling on that. Now, what I will tell you is you should always be having conversations around this individual's growth. So accountability meetings are great to make sure that they are meeting the tasks that are required of them in their job description. Yet when is there a conversation about their growth? Right? And so I think there needs to be, every individual should be doing a growth plan with every person that's in their organization, agents and support professionals alike. And we should be making sure that we're hitting the mark on that. We should also be having conversations around the skill set and the knowledge and the attitude and the habits that they need to develop to really succeed in that role. So what I want you to hear in this is there should be accountability meetings. Do not get me wrong. And if you don't have time in an accountability meeting to spend half of the time holding them accountable and the other half of the time coaching them on their growth, then you should have a separate time where you meet with them on their growth plan. I like to do quarterly meetings just around growth. We meet for 1 hour every quarter and we make sure that we are hitting the marks that we need to. Now, growth comes up in our accountability conversations, yet it's not a full conversation dedicated to that. And one of the things that was so great about my relationship with Jeff is he's like, this is what I intended for you when I hired you. Yet at any time, if you decide that you don't want to keep running alongside me, and like maybe you fell in love with listings management and that's where you want to stay, I'm good with it. Like, I just want to make sure that you are fulfilled in what you're doing. I just need your help to now find your replacement as the VP of operations. And so it was always a conversation when we brought in the next piece of leverage. It was not anything that was forced or expected. And because I knew that we had that open dialogue, it was like, and every time I'm like, no, I want to keep running with you. I want to keep running with you. Yet it was a conversation. In addition to that, I don't think there's anything more important than getting to know your people. Like in part of the onboarding process that I would do for every team member, I would make them fill out a love language quiz. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the 5 Love Languages book, it's actually a book about the 5 love languages, and I use it more in my professional life than I do in my personal life. So essentially there are 5 love languages, right? Quality time, acts of service, gifts, personal touch, and words of affirmation. And so I can tell you I'm a quality time and acts of service. So you want to show me you love me? Help me build something that's interesting to me. Or you want to show me that you love me? Spend one-on-one uninterrupted quality time with me. Now, Jeff, on the other hand, was physical touch and words of affirmation. And so in a work setting, that was a lot of high fives and handshakes and like hug taps and, hey, you're doing a great job. Hey, you're wonderful. Well, when he attempted to use his love languages on me, it didn't work. Because he could tell me I was doing a great job all day long. And yet if he didn't have 30 minutes on his calendar every week for me, he wasn't speaking my love language. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity. So do you know the love language of your individuals? Do you know what excites them? I used to also make them fill out a form that literally, it was literally called Amanda's Love. And it was a way for me to love on you. So I wanted to know your t-shirt size, your favorite coffee, your favorite candy, all of those things. So on a day that I'm like, you know what? Caitlin's been kicking ass. Today, I'm going to bring her Reese's cups and her favorite Starbucks because that's what I know she loves. Now it was just something I could do extra for them, right? And so getting to know your people, getting to know what makes them tick, getting to know what they want on their growth plan, getting to know what's important to them, I think is super, super important. And that should come up in conversation regularly. Because the worst day is the day that you walk in and there's a resignation letter on your desk and you had no idea it was coming. You should know well in advance that someone is thinking about leaving. And if you don't, then shame on you.
Yeah, I just got chills. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. There's a saying that I hear that is my number one pet peeve. I don't mean to lead into the answer to this question. So the right answer here, Amanda, is not, oh, that's my favorite. I hear this all the time and it drives me bananas. Often people that are leaders, or I shouldn't say that, often people who are hiring other people think with leadership, if you hire talent, take a million years on Recruit Select, hire the best possible talent, because if they're talent, they'll figure it out. How is that true and not true?
Oh gosh.
I think it can be misleading.
Yeah. So I mean, in all fairness, it's like you have to give them some type of tools to succeed, right? And so I like literally anytime I look back at anyone who's ever left our organization or left the team, my organization, anything, when I look back, my first question is, what's my DNA on it? Did I set them up for success? Was I checking in with them regularly? So I absolutely believe that talent wants to go figure it out. Talent is raising the bar. However, like that doesn't mean you hire them and then you're hands off. You need to be having regular conversations. You need to be enlisting feedback from them. Even y'all, support professionals are an SC on the disc. They are usually not individuals who are volunteering information that is not positive. They are people that will carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, right? They don't like contention at all. And so you've got to enlist that. You've got to let them know that there is a space for them to talk about what's going on in your organization. So I think absolutely talent will push you. It's like tug of war with them, right? Talent will be raising the bar. Talent wants to learn. They want to grow. also though, you have got to make sure that you're giving them a space to do that. So what tools are you enlisting feedback? And if you're not getting any feedback, I promise you, you're failing, because there's feedback. You're just not asking the right questions, or you're not letting them know that it's a safe place to give that feedback. So yes, I think there is a yes and no to both of those sides. You have to make sure that you're in the conversation. If I don't even know if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense, because I think talent will figure it out. Meaning, if you give them, here's the end goal, here's the tools available, here's when I need it done by, here's our regular check-ins around it. And then if you have questions at those check-ins, I can help to remove obstacles to move forward. Talent can figure it out. Amanda could go run any type of company that we wanted to, as long as we put some parameters around it. Here's the goal, here's the objective, here's the tools you have, here's regular check-ins, here's your support. Talent can figure it out. But what doesn't work is, well, they're talented, they can just figure it out. I'll see you in 30 days. That's not really fair to your individual, especially if they're talent. They're going to get pissed.
1,000%. One of my favorite questions to ask, and this came from Gary Keller. And so here's a great place to start. Anytime you leave a conversation with somebody that's on your team, the final question should be, what question didn't I ask you that I should have? And that will open up. Well, great question. I use that in screening interviews all the time. And I spoke to someone the other day, and she's like, well, you didn't ask me how bad I wanted the job, or if I wanted the job. And I was like, great. So what's your answer? And she laid it out, and I got to see a little bit more into her personality and how bad she wanted it. So I think that's such a great question, right? What question didn't I ask you that I should have? And see what happens.
Gosh, Amanda, I'm so glad you brought that up. Would you like to answer your own question?
You asked me some really great questions. I think a really great question to ask is, if I could go back and do it differently, what would I have done? Like, knowing what I know now. And quite honestly, the answer to that is, I did not realize in the beginning how important communication is between a partnership like that, the partnerships that you all have. And so I'm a people pleaser by nature. I'm also very competitive, and I like to be right and on my game. Like, I will hold my tongue until I get all the evidence and the data, just so that I don't show up to a conversation wrong. That's how important it is to me. It's kind of crazy. And I would get my feelings hurt all the time. It's funny that you say that I'm on the offensive now, because I was on the defensive a lot in the beginning. And he was a very high D driver. And he's like, it was no pat on the back. He's like, great, you're doing your job. That's wonderful. And like, that's just how he operated. And I would get my feelings hurt a lot. So open dialogue, and then not taking everything personally. I've learned to remove my emotion. The facts are the facts. We had a project. There was a deadline. Did we meet it or did we not? How do we go back and fix it and make sure that it doesn't happen again? And it's really hard to tell somebody that when they've spent so much time and energy and effort, and their DNA is all over it, that it wasn't good enough, or we didn't meet the deadline. I get that. And so identifying how to pull my emotion out of it and just focus on the facts, it saved me a lot of heartache later on. And then obviously communication is key. If you guys aren't talking, it's a huge problem.
Yeah, that's incredible. I totally agree. I wish you had told Caitlin 7 years ago those same things, because I have had a lot of sleepless nights of feelings hurt, when the fact of the matter is that wasn't the intention at all. And maybe the onus was on me because I didn't achieve something, and still wanted the pat on the back, even though I didn't reach the goal. So yeah, that's a good one. Did y'all have any questions for Amanda? Amanda, this was so incredible. I have to tell you, I took a ton of notes myself. You gave me a lot of great things that I can implement. So selfishly, I appreciated your time and your hour and all your intelligence. You are an absolute force to be reckoned with. And we had some great engagement, great questions, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you for having me. Listen, Caitlin has my information. So if you have any follow-up questions, I still run my own inbox. So I see everything that comes through. And so I would be happy to answer any questions, or, if there's something that you heard me talk about that I may be able to provide to you, a system, a process, or anything, please feel free to reach out. I'm here. I love Caitlin. I love the time I get to spend with her when I do. So thank you for having me.
I love you, Amanda. You know that. I don't have to tell you that. because you have done just an incredible job pouring into our group, and I cannot thank you enough. Your friendship is something I'll always be grateful for. And then to all of y'all, I've been in Texas for a little while, all y'all. Oh, we do have one question.
Yeah.
Whitney wants to know what your favorite book is. You mentioned Rocket Fuel. Is there another one?
Business that really changed my mindset is The Infinite Game. Simon Sinek is an amazing one.
Great one.
And then I would say more on the personal side, like self-reflecting, and get your tissue box, is The 5 Regrets of the Dying. Gave me some massive perspective around mindset in life. So those are probably my 2 favorite at this moment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And all of you, if you have questions for Amanda, shoot them my way and I'll get you in contact with Amanda. And then also, if you have new topics or things you want to dive deeper into, Amanda brought up a great point. For us to be able to plug into different resources out there and bring them to you is something we really, really want to be a part of. So anything y'all need, just let us know. Otherwise, everyone have a great week. And Amanda, again, I can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. My pleasure, y'all. Enjoy the week. Go crush it.
Bye, guys.